I'm gonna try to talk about the remake of this game over footage of me getting all of the puzzles. If I have the time, I also want to talk about the changes in the Link's Awakening Switch remake. So, in the remake of this game, the Wii U gamepad lets you view the game's map and turn into Wolf Link with just a single touch. So that's awesome. There's a ghost lantern item that glows when puzzles are nearby. It doesn't specify how nearby it has to be though. If you have to be that close to the puzzle, aren't you gonna see the anyways? I like that the map lists the pose you discovered. In the remake, the overworld map has more information to help you find points of interest, like forest and hot grass, discovered pose, and the place you started the game in. In the remake, there's 12 tiers of light to collect in each area, down from 16. That's a little better. It would be ideal if it made it so that you never had to do any backtracking in the Twilight section at all. It depends on which exact ones were removed. Some of the puzzles are in the Cave of Ordeals, which is ridiculously annoying. And again, it's just fighting enemies. So I'm not going to show all of it. There's no point. I'm just going to show the new stuff. Rupees no longer remain in a treasure chest if your wallet is too full. I actually like that. I understand why they did it in the original game, but you weren't that desperate for rupees that it was useful. People really did prefer to feel like they got 100% completion by collecting all of the chests. Nobody likes having to backtrack through a dungeon all over again so that they can actually collect the chests that time. In the remake, wallets were modified to hold more rupees. So then, what was the point of the previous change? If you have bigger wallets, then you no longer have to... Well, it's nice to have a bigger wallet. The whole reason it sucked in the first place that in the original game, rupees remained in the treasure chest if your wallet was full, was that happened all the time. Because there was a 1,000 rupee limit. If that limit is gone in the remake, then there's no reason to get rid of the chest remains closed thing. The remake also has hero mode available from the start. Link takes double damage and no health replenishing hearts appear in the world. And the dungeons are also mirrored. I wish they could just have a mirror mode without the double damage problem, because then I'd actually have a chance of playing it. In the remake, dozens of Miiverse stamps were hidden in chests around the world. Well, that's useless. I guess a few people will care about that, and it's technically good to have variety in what you can get. But I think people would prefer rupees because then they can use it for their magic armor. And of course, the game got better graphics, just barely. It got better graphics and textures. I never noticed much of a difference, though, between the remake and the original game. The character models still look bad. The remake of the game launches in a pack with a new Wolf Link amiibo, which is sold separately from it, which unlocks a Cave of Shadows challenge and saves a record of your progress through it. And at the end you get a wallet capable of holding 9,999 rupees. I never liked the design of this fairy. It just doesn't make any sense that they would make her look like that. Well, I understand the reason, but I don't know why they got away with it. And isn't the reward for completing the Cave of Ordeals underwhelming? At least the fact that a piece of heart isn't at the end of it means that you aren't compelled to beat all of it. And the Ganondorf amiibo causes Link to take quadruple damage, so it's completely worthless. And the Link and Toon Link amiibo restores your arrows, while the Zelda and Sheik one restores your hearts. I can't believe I actually managed to land on the floating platform on my first try. Also, the inventory and map is on the gamepad. That's cool. I hope the gyro control for arrows and slingshots is optional, or I definitely wouldn't play the game. And what I'm showing you right now is the result of not showing Ilya her charm. The game doesn't register that you beat Hidden Village. So I had to restore memories first before I could not only get the final heart piece for some reason, but also get the Poe to appear. In the remake, you need the shield to disrupt some monsters' attacks. While in the original, your shield was usually not required, which is how it's supposed to be. In Link's Awakening, you have to hold a button down to even use the shield in the first place. So of course you don't want to have this game designed around forcing you to use the shield sometimes. In the remake, you can actually bypass collecting heart containers if you want to. So that's good for people who want that for some reason. There's something amusing about this cat finding side quest at first, but it gets tedious. Some of the cats look the same as other ones. Like, you have to talk to them and scroll through some text before you can find out if you've already talked to them or not. Like, it's not as easy as it looks. It really took forever for me to find the last one. I don't know why the Poe Soul only appears after you completed that side quest. It's really stupid. It's unprecedented. I had to read on the Poe Soul guide after clearing Hidden Village to even get the idea I could do this. The reward for getting all the Poe Souls is insulting. It's about the journey, the satisfaction of collecting all of them. It's awesome that in the remake, it gets rid of Link going off balance when he claw shots to walls. And Sword doesn't bounce off walls anymore. The rupees don't constantly remind you of what value they are every time you pick a non-green one up when you reload your file. In the original Link's Awakening, your sword range was limited to the block immediately in front of you. In the remake, it's 3 blocks in front of you and each side. In the remake, your sword range when you're jumping is limited to the area immediately in front of you, rather than swinging your sword increasing your sword range. So right after a cool change, they have a lame change for no reason. In Link's Awakening, when playing Monbo as Monbo, you are instantly teleported to Monbo's pond or the beginning of the temple. In the remake, you're asked which warp point you'd like to transport to. In the original Link's Awakening, the Rapids ride had no time trial and no Rapids raid, while in the Switch version, you have both. And the Rapids map is different than the original, and you can hookshot to the trees and weeds found within to work towards collecting all the prizes. Well, that sounds fun. In the original, the hookshot was useful as a weapon that could cause damage to most monsters, but in the remake, it only stuns monsters most of the time. That's inexcusable. The trade-off is that you can attach to most trees and many other obstacles. In the remake, you can use the Rock's Feather to climb ladders quicker. You can also accidentally jump on top of many landmarks and objects that you couldn't before. Cool. In the original, the crystals that require the Pegasus boots to break would shatter like glass, but in the original they pop like an inflatable object, and hitting one with the sword makes a hollow sound. That's a pointless change. In the original, you had to hold the button assigned to the bracelet and pull backwards on the D-pad to lift an object, but in the remake, Link picks up the object immediately. In the original Color Dungeon, the skeletons would pose a riddle to Link before letting him enter. In the remake, there is no riddle, so that's faster. And they even offer to sell you magic powder. In the original, the chest knight pieces had no rhyme or reason as to how they would land. In the remake, they follow their respective chess rules and will land 2 blocks ahead and 1 to the left or right when throwing it. Okay, if you don't know chess rules, that's still worthless to you. The point then is to land the piece on the specially marked floor tiles. I guess that makes it easier. The strategy for some of the boss battles was changed in the remake. It tends to display more hints as to what the boss will do. Good. In other cases, you'll have to devise an entirely new strategy to defeat the boss. Well, that's insulting to the people who played the original. You'll have to learn a completely new thing. You won't have muscle memory to rely on anymore. For the most part, it seems like it's a better game. I still can't get over how it looks, though. I don't know why Link doesn't have white around his eyes. Right now I'm looking at the TV Tropes page for Link's Awakening, and looking at the "they changed it, now it sucks" entry. So let's see the changes that are completely inexcusable. The Switch remake removed the Bulldog Mobians. People were complaining about that as early as 2019 because there's no reason to lower the diversity of the game's enemies. It's like the game was rushed, so they had to remove those enemies. The photographer and his side quests were removed too. So that's stupid. It is annoying being told to stop in your tracks and wait for a character to take a picture of Link when you're progressing through the game, whether you like it or not. And it was replaced with Dampy's Dungeon Maker. A lot of people didn't see the chamber dungeons as a worthy or engaging substitute to the camera shop. I never really looked back on any of my photographs in the first place. There's just no excuse for removing anything in a remake. Unless it's literally offensive. If you remove anything else, it just comes off like you're removing it to rush the game out to meet the deadline. Which makes it less of a remake and more of a demake. The idea of a Dungeon Maker for Zelda is cool, obviously. But Super Mario Maker has a lot of really bad levels because, go figure, they're being made by amateurs. So wouldn't it suck most of the time anyways? And if you can't share your games and you can't play other people's games, that would be completely pointless anyways. I mean, it would take a lot of work to make a dungeon for yourself. Wouldn't it just feel tedious to go through it because you already know what the place is like? Dampy himself was chosen as the one to host the new system. The rest of the game uses suspiciously similar substitutes of characters from other games to reinforce the notion that it's all just a dream of the Windfish. Some people will point out that the inclusion of the actual Dampy leads to a break in this world-building trend. It is confusing, but he's a character exclusive to the remake. I see him as a meta fourth wall character, not as someone actually supposed to be in the game. I only really care about gameplay changes. And inferior graphics changes. Like, there was no excuse for changing the way the crystals that you dash through were. They just seem cooler in the earlier game. Like, you break them. They feel more like obstacles. Also from the Switch remake is the nerfing of several late game items. I already talked about the hook shot. And the magic rod now takes 2 shots to defeat the most common of foes. That's inexcusable. Even the boomerang was stripped of enough attack power that some players are still complaining about it. So that's lame. The boomerang being powerful is one of the main things that gives the game its identity. They changed the physics for the claw game in the remake. So there's always a possibility that the item would fall out of the claw for no reason. It just pads out the game. As I expected, there's an orchestrated soundtrack for the remake. It's mostly strings based. And as I also expected, changing the instrumentation for the music changes the feeling of some of the songs. So the string-based instrumentation lacks the right amount of epic bombast in many situations that might have called for it. Like the more low-key final boss theme that sounded scary in the original version. They also changed the design of Link's first shield to the popular Hylian shield. So people are complaining about that being pandering, instead of preserving the identity of the original game. I don't really feel anything about that. There are good things about the remake though. None of the mini-bosses, except for the Dodongo snakes, respawn. And Blano's attack is nerfed so that it only bounces Link back to a nearby room. As for the Eagle boss of Eagle's Tower, in the remake, falling off the tower doesn't reset the fight. So that's cool. Blano doesn't stun you anymore when he punches you. So the shield's actually equipped automatically, which I guess makes it harmless. What's also automatically equipped is the Power Bracelet and the Pegasus Boots, so you don't have to change items nearly as often. Sounds like it fixes the biggest problem with the game. And when it comes to the Guardian Acorns and Pieces of Power, the remake tones down the annoyance of the jingle and has the item run on a timer, instead of persisting until Link takes enough damage. I don't see why you would want it to run on a timer though. That just sounds like a problem. The remake's got less tedious dialogue boxes. That's cool. The color dungeon was made colorblind friendly. It's good for colorblind people. It just misses the point of the dungeon. The whole point of the dungeon is supposed to be taking advantage of the fact that it's in color when the other dungeons weren't made that way. And fairies are catchable in glass bottles in the remake. It takes longer to beat the anglerfish boss in the Switch remake. Something interesting about the remake is you can use a glitch to keep Bow Wow past the point where you're supposed to return him. I'm surprised there are any glitches at that level in the Switch remake of the game. That's a nice surprise. There's also voice acting added for Marin. Obviously, she sounds a lot better when she's singing. But you can also hear her squeal and laugh when you dig holes. I don't see the point of having voice acting in the game. It's a top-down game and a remake of an old game. I like that in the Switch version of the game you can skip Canalet's castle. And that's how you keep Bow Wow in the first place. Too bad you can't keep him forever. The second Marin joins your party, he disappears. The chamber dungeons let you add wall masters to your dungeon. And they show up in every room as soon as they start spawning. Aside from, of course, boss rooms. I don't know why they do it like that. Nobody would like them then. The fire enemies are easier to hit in the remake. That being the ones that shoot fireballs. And when it comes to the mushroom-like bomb-tossing enemies, they're easier to deal with in the remake because they throw bombs with less frequency. And they aren't as agile in avoiding your sword. The boss of the base shrine is harder in the remake. He can cause collision damage and warp around the arena. That's inexcusable. Why would you make something that wasn't capable of dealing collision damage capable of that in a newer game? Collision damage is something for old games. Why would you add a outdated, cheap concept? Like the bosses weren't hard enough as it is. And I liked that the anglerfish took seconds in the original game. There's really no reason to make it take longer in the remake. Because nobody plays Zelda for the boss fights. They play Zelda so that they can get through the dungeons. The remake replaces the nonsensical dialogue of the buzz blobs with hints that tell you how to get tunes for the ocarina. So that's better. It means that it's not a waste of time programming them to talk. It doesn't matter that it's a spoiler because newbies aren't going to know to use magic powder on them anyways. And it's great that in the remake, you don't get a text box telling you, this looks pretty heavy, you won't be able to lift it if you walk into something. The messages only appear when checking the pots and stuff without the bracelet. Of course they would get rid of that because the bracelet's equipped automatically in that game. The crystals that the boots destroy don't display the message automatically either. There's no reason they should even keep that message there. I guess the message served its purpose the first time, but it shouldn't appear anymore after that. And people liked that in the original game, you could press A in front of a dresser, and it would say, "Wow, this is a nice chest." They changed the text in the remake. Although the vanity in Crazy Tracy's house still has the original description. So it was just a complete waste of time to add new text because they were too lazy to even do it all the way. And when Link holds Marin up like an item, in the original game, the text said this could be his big chance. The remake changed it so that she's tilted slightly diagonally when Link holds her. So that's a nice change, because it makes it less awkward that way. In the original game, the Fairy Queen says she'll take Link out. In the Switch version, she says she'll take him outside. I usually had fun with Sunshine. I like doing this aside from the timed blue coins, but I wish the game was easier to control. I kept wishing that special jumps were on separate buttons. Super Mario World had the spin jump be on a separate button just fine. I never did it by accident. In terms of levels, I only hate the hotel. It's so samey it's hard to remember how to get around it. And I hate falling after vertical platforming and having to redo stuff. So I'm not too fond of Rico Harbor either.